Hi, all. My name is Zev Cook. I'm running for the Tacoma City Council in District 5, the South End Tacoma. I got involved with community organizing around 2018. Ever since, I've been working on issues of housing justice. I've worked as a social worker. I've worked in politics, helping pass some of the strongest renter protections in the state of Washington. And this year, we're continuing to fight for a Tacoma that works for working people. Part of that is making sure that transit is fast and free for all of us. And today we are riding Route 202 with Downtown on the Go. See you out there. Yeah, so I think funding for public development, especially to keep our roads safe for everyone, is hugely important for our community. I would absolutely support Streets Initiative 2 coming back to the ballot. I think that we need to think more about how we implement it if it's going to pass. This was rejected on I believe, April special election ballot. I think it was a mistake for a council to put it on a special election where there was going to be lower turnout. So there's the strategy that needs to change on getting these packages passed so that we can have that funding. But also it needs to look different too. I've been out there knocking doors, having tons of conversations with folks, and we've talked about the Streets Initiative 2 and the need to repair our infrastructure, our public infrastructure, build potholes, make things ADA compliant. But I talked to a lot of people who told me that, I didn't vote for it because the tax burden is already so high, the cost of living is already so high, we can't raise taxes on working people. And I completely agree with that, which is why when we come back and do Streets Initiative 2 in the future, when we look for this funding, it has to be a progressive model of taxing the rich, of implementing a payroll tax and income tax in the city of Tacoma, and looking at fighting for those things at the state level too, to make sure that everyone is paying their fair share instead of constantly raising the cost burden on Tacoma's working families. Yeah, I think first of all, we need to get that funding in for public development, for ADA compliance, we just talked about. But also we need to focus on expanding public transit options to make sure that we have a city where people can get by without a car, where people can always access fast and free transit in the community. One of the things that we lost during COVID was the rapid transit bus line down Pacific Ave. That's exactly what we're talking about, an intersection that has some of the highest incident rates in the city. That we could help tackle that by creating an express bus lane and not backing down when people want us to give that project up, which is exactly what happened. We have to fight for public infrastructure projects. We have to fight for transit projects that put people first in the city of Tacoma. Yeah, absolutely. So I think that we've seen in the past, the city council has been a one-trick pony with raising sales taxes on the working people of Tacoma, raising the cost burden on working people. We've seen that these levies are failing. They tried to pass a fire levy. It failed because the tax burden is too high. They tried to pass Streets Initiative 1 to fund public road development, and it failed because the burden on working people is too high. We need to look at progressive funding models. We need to fight for an income tax in the city of Tacoma, in the state of Washington. And we've already seen how some of these models can be successful in cities like Tacoma with a jumpstart tax, with a tax to fund social housing. We can implement that here in Tacoma. On top of that, we are so behind in funding for public infrastructure and doing the repair for this work, expanding on what's already available, that what we need is a huge injection of capital to get that jump started. What I'd like to see is that we invest in creating a public bank here in Tacoma to make sure that we can do that 100-to-1 investment in city infrastructure early on, and then fundraise against that with a new progressive tax model to make sure that we can continue to not just have that initial injections to greatly expand rapid transit, to greatly expand public infrastructure, but make sure that's sustained for the long term for the working people of Tacoma. We need to make buses, we need to make public transportation fast and free, and we can do it here in Tacoma. Yeah, so I think that public transit is a huge issue. It's one of the top household expenses for Tacomans. I talked about this exact issue with the Amalgamated Transit Union, our bus drivers union, and they asked me would I support increasing the sales tax and bringing it up to that highest level if they went to the ballot around that issue. And what I told them was that, I absolutely believe in fully funding transit. It's a huge issue, but what I don't believe in is sales taxes in general, because they put such a high burden on working families in the community. Now, if that's the only option, that's a different conversation, but I think that we need to start being creative and fighting for a different model of funding at the state level. And when I had that conversation, Transit agreed, the transit union agreed with me that they don't want to see us put a higher burden on working families. They agree that we need a progressive funding model for transit services in Tacoma, in Pierce County, and I'm proud to be solely endorsed by the transit union here in Tacoma. Yeah. I think for so much of the 5th district, a super basic issue is that we are missing sidewalks. This is not just a problem for ADA compliance. It's a problem for everyone. It's a safety problem for our kids, for everyone. We need to make sure that every neighborhood in the South End, every neighborhood in Tacoma has quality sidewalks to keep everyone safe. We need the funding for that. We need to tax the rich in Tacoma, in the state of Washington, make sure that we can fund development, public development, to make sure that everyone has sidewalks, everyone has access to transit, and everyone has access to safe neighborhoods. Yeah, so transportation is such a big issue for our community. It's a top household expense. And what we need to do in Tacoma, what we need to do in the state of Washington and in this country is make sure that our communities have full access to fast and free buses and public transportation. We can do this all around the country. We can do it by taxing the rich, but it starts with standing up for working people and putting people over profit.